Hi there, you can see here the game is set up ready for play. All the setup units are on the map. And including some reinforcements that come in on the turn track. This is the turn we start the game in. So Austro-Hungarian, British reinforcements, some Russian mobilizations here and a few naval units. And then as even down here, there's these Russian units mobilized later in this first turn. But first on the map, I'd just like to point one thing out. You can see, so here's the West Front, here's the French, here's the Central, here's Germany, and then here on the East Front, it's not so easy for you to distinguish at that range, but the Russian units are here. They're a darker green, and kind of like a muted tan green here are the German units. These are the Austro-Hungarian. Now, let me just go in a bit closer to show you exactly what's going on. I'll show you the Western Front first. So you see here on the Western Front, the Germans have actually only got three headquarters units. They have a total of 9 in the game at the beginning. They've got another one here, and then that means the rest of them are all here. Now normally their setup is that there's only one German headquarters on the Eastern Front, but I am playing as their first card. Oh, where's it gone? Hang on a sec. So I'm going to choose for them as their as an initial objective card, the von Moltke, the Elder Plan. Now you can see at the bottom that indicates I discard the Schleifen Plan. So they're not going to go and try to take Paris by moving over the Western Front through Belgium, and then that allows them to move 4 headquarters and 24 divisional equivalents. So that's 4 armies essentially to within 3 hexes of Russia. So the 3 armies that were historically positioned here, I have moved over to the East Front. They're also, as a contingency card, they've chosen a role on the colonial campaign table. So they're hoping to have some effect on the British Empire in that portion. So my choice of that campaign card was an outcome of my choice of the war aims for the Central Powers, and the war aims were determined by a study of the victory objectives and the political events table. Now, both sides has the same victory objectives. They have 3, and you sort of calibrate each other's against to determine your overall level of victory. So the first victory objective is to end the war with high or average morale. The second is to control 10 or more industrial or petroleum hexes of the enemy. Okay, this is where I've noted it. And the third is to have at least 2 of Britain, France or Russia, or Germany or Austro-Hungary surrender. So obviously the Central Powers, it feels like the onus is on them, as it was historically is in the war. So they want to force Britain, France or surrender, or Russia to surrender. And so how does an enemy force surrender? Well, surrender is occasioned by low morale and 1917 or later happening. So it cannot occur as an outcome of this political events table in 1914 or 1915. At the end of every turn, that's every yearly quarter, each country rolls separately on this political events table. They roll a 1d6, and on a 0 there's a chance of revolution. If you have a revolution, you roll on the revolution table, and there is a chance there of surrender. Now, so revolution can only happen on a 0, so you need a negative modifier, and there's only 2. one is that your morale is low, and the other is that it's 1917 or less. So, but note, if it's 1914 or 1915, there's a positive 1 modifier. So even if you have low morale, in 1914 or 1915, you will not get a 0 on the table. So you will not, there's no chance of revolution and surrender in those first 2 years of the war. Now, obviously, that's a decision from the designer because the belligerents did not assume that, we know, when they started the war. But that is the case in our game. So there's no quick end unless somehow each player sort of decides from that their ending position in those early years to enter, both players decide to enter into peace negotiations, and one will basically be saying, yes, I've got no hope of winning this. So it could happen early, but that would be a decision of the players, not a function of the game system. But the player decision will be based upon likely outcomes due to the game system. So that's what we're looking for, is higher average morale, control of industrial and petroleum centres, and surrender. So let's just check again how surrender happens. Assuming we manage to force revolution in a country, we look at the revolution table and we see again it's a 1d6. Now this time 1 and a 2, there's no 0 column. But 1 and 2 are red terror or nationalist revolution, so those both count as surrender, and with differing effects, because obviously one country could surrender but the war could continue. So you want a 1 or 2 on the d6 following that initial 0 result on the political events table. Now what are the modifiers? So this is the really interesting bit, is that Britain and the United States get +2. So they are only going to have a chance of nationalist revolution, and only if the capital, which is a -1, is occupied. Now you cannot, the Central Powers cannot occupy the capital of America, so that they're never going to have red terror, but they might, in fact they're never going to have nationalist revolution either. So America, United States won't surrender. But if the capital of Britain is occupied, they could surrender with nationalist revolution. Now that is unlikely, considering the power of the British Navy. So let's have a look at the other modifiers. Now Russia has a -2 modifier, so you don't even have to occupy their capital for a good chance of revolution. Occupying their capital will obviously increase that chance a lot. Austria-Hungary is a -1 as well, so they're more likely to end, and Germany is a +1. So Germany's not going to end in red terror, but it might end in nationalist revolution. So what that tells us is that Russia is the better bet for surrender than France is. And so consequently, because of also the fact that there's not so much room for manoeuvre, we have that Maginot Line, and we also have the fact of having to pass through and fight Belgium and possibly Holland, etc., etc. We don't want that hassle, considering that we think we have a chance as the Central Powers to move through relatively open areas to strike towards Petrograd, the Russian capital, up there near Russian Finland. That decided the campaign card for the Central Powers, and it's decided the overall war aims that I've devised. Quite straightforward. For the Central Powers, they want to seize Petrograd and force Russian surrender, whilst bringing intent and morale to low or to 0, which would end the game and then automatically in check victory conditions. Through captures of cities and surrender in Serbia, Montenegro, Japan, or Italy, because Italy's going to come in on the Entente side. If necessary, France. I don't think that's so likely. But the point is that the surrender of these countries, it doesn't happen via those political events tables. It happens in other means. I can't remember exactly, but that they will bring morale down low. So that capturing all these places will bring the Entente morale down. So the Central Powers initially are looking for that as their means to break the alliance against them and win the war, for them win a peace. The Entente themselves are intending to force surrender of both Austria, Hungary and Germany through control of their capitals or in pushing their morale to low and offering peace negotiations to them, so putting them in an untenable position to continue. And as a side effect really of both of those war aims will be control of industrial and petroleum hexes, so either side within that could gain all three of their objectives and cancel out any objectives that the opposing side may have found. So that is just a quick something to talk about the initial considerations. Now, I haven't chosen the... yes, I have chosen the card for the Entente, but I've forgotten what it was. I think I only chose one card. I might have to choose again for them because the Central Powers will start the strategy card phase. So I'm just about ready to begin the first turn, and we'll see what I video of that.